Over the past 3 or 4 weeks, we've been listening to Brother Eddie preach about gleaning and Ruth and being a servant and God's love and all those things from that book. And Wednesday night, I got the chance to, basically Brother Eddie was out of town, so I got the chance to explain to everybody what that meant to me and what I took from that and what I focused on in my own life about gleaning from the truths of God. And I was going to do that. I'm going to do that in the next service as well. He's given me the opportunity, and I want to say thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to stand here. It's a big responsibility, and I don't take it lightly. But this morning in this early service, I just think that God gave me a word to say to the servant of God, to the one who's serving, the one who's given their life to the ministry or the service or just to love one another, to Christ, basically, for the Christian who's given his life to Christ and is actively just working and serving and doing those things. There's some things that happens in our lives sometimes, and there's some words that God gives us. If you've brought your Bible with you today, you can turn to Haggai in the 2nd chapter. And while you're turning, what I'd like to do is just explain a little bit about what's going on here in these verses. We're only going to read 9 verses today. We're going to stop right there. Israel had gone into captivity. They had been disobedient to God, and they had gone into captivity for 70 years. And during that time, they just longed to go home. That's all they wanted, was just to go back home to Jerusalem and to serve God in that city. And finally, after 70 years, God allowed them to go home, and they went home in 3 groups. We're in Haggai chapter 2. They went home in 3 groups. The first group, you're going to need to know these names as we read. The first group was under a man named Zerubbabel. I know it's a goofy name. I don't know why any mama would name her kid Zerubbabel, but she did. So Zerubbabel was like the governor. He was like the first king that came back for Israel. He was, after the captivity, the first king. So he was the governor, and his job was basically just to set up the city again, just to set it back up. The second group was under Ezra, and Ezra's job was to build the temple. And under him, they started to build the temple. And the third group is Nehemiah, and his job was to build the wall. Haggai was preaching at the time that Ezra was there and the temple was being started. So these people of God had been in captivity, and God called them home. He called them home, specifically for the second group, to build the house of God and to raise it back up from the ashes that it was in. So they come back home, and what happened was these Israelites, they got back home and they started building the temple, and they quit. They decided to stop and go and work on their own houses. And they started building their own houses and building up their own lives. And, the Bible talks about how they lived in Haggai chapter 1. They were living in paneled houses and really in comfort. And they were just building their own stuff up. They were building their houses up, and they had neglected the house of God. Well, in the first chapter of Haggai, he comes and he gives God's command. He says, you got to stop this. You got to stop forsaking the house of God and stop building your own houses until the house of God's finished. And they obeyed. They went and they obeyed everything that Haggai said. They obeyed. And now, here in Haggai chapter 2, they were building the house of God. They had left their own comfort. They had left their own stuff. And they had put all their energy into God's service. They had put all their energy into God's ministry. They had put all their energy into God's house to build it up. So they had obeyed. But now there's another problem here in chapter 2 that Haggai is going to address. They were getting a little discouraged. They were getting a little, this is kind of not working out the way we thought it was. Maybe we're doing something wrong. Maybe it's just not being successful. And God has a word for those people. So let's read it together. Chapter 2, verse 1, it says, in the 7th month, in the 21st day of the month, came the word of the Lord by the prophet Haggai, saying, speak now to Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, that's the best I can do, and to Joshua, the son of Josedek, the high priest, and to the residue of the people, saying, who is left among you that saw this house in her first glory? Talking about Solomon's temple. And how do you see it now? Is it not in your eyes in comparison of it as nothing? He's saying what was going on is they remembered Solomon's temple and how great it was, all the gold and splendor and all the majesty and how awesome God's house was and how just how wonderful it was. There were some older men there that remembered what that house looked like. And they looked at it now after they had left their homes, they hadn't left their families, but they had left building up their own estates to come and to work into the house of God. And now they're looking at it going, they just failed to see the value in it. They were obeying God's word. He had said, you leave what you're doing. You stop building your own stuff, and you go to the house of God, and you build on the house of God. They had obeyed, and they were obeying the best they could. But they saw the temple as it was sat right there at Ezra's time while Haggai was preaching, and they said, this temple here, it won't ever be as wonderful as Solomon's temple. It won't ever. They were doubting the value of their service. They were doubting the value of their ministry. They were doubting everything. They started saying, that they weren't doubting God. They were obeying God. They weren't saying, God, how could you do this? They weren't doing any of that. They were just saying, God, we're not good enough. We're not doing good enough. It's just not working. Something's wrong. They were calling out for. They didn't know what they wanted. All they knew is that what they were doing here was not. It didn't seem as good as what it used to be. They said it's just not working. Something's wrong. And to top it all off, if you ever read Ezra, it's a good book. Both Ezra and Nehemiah are really, really good, interesting books. These people, both from within the community and without the community, go to attacking the work of, they were saying, like you've read it in Nehemiah. I know Brother Eddie's preached on it, and they did it in Ezra as well. Like when they were building the wall, there was raised up from within and without people that would attack the work that was going on. And in Ezra the same way, they were building the temple. They were laying the foundation of the temple. And here comes people. You're not supposed to be doing that. You're doing it wrong. You're not doing it. This is not what. And it was just continually. Man, I don't know. I guess that's me. I'm sorry. Persecution. So first of all, they got this. I don't think we're doing it right. It's just not, doesn't seem to be working. It doesn't seem to be successful. Why is it not like it used to be? And then you got all these other people coming along going, it's wrong, it's not right, you're doing bad. They were persecuting the leaders. They persecuted Nehemiah big time. And it was just an obstacle. Every time you turn around, every time you turn your head, every time you turn your back, there was an obstacle to the service of God. And, it just seemed like we're going. Every time we take 2 steps forward, we get knocked to 3 steps back. And it just seems like, look, God, I gave up everything to do this. You commanded me to go and build your house. You commanded me to leave my estate, to leave off working and building up my own estate in order to serve you. And I want to do that. And I'm not doubting you. And I'm not going back on my heels. And I'm not backing up. And I'm not doing any of those things. But it just don't seem like what I'm doing is working. I mean, I don't see any success going on. I don't see the value of what I'm doing. And so this is where they were. And so after a while building the temple, the Israelites, they stopped striving for the goal, really. They stopped pushing forward. They stopped, I want to say lusting after the goal. That may not be the right word, but they stopped being passionate about, we're going to do this, and they just started we just need to hold on to what we got. Let's just hold on right here to what we got, and let's keep it like this because it's good. They lost that drive because they couldn't recognize the value of what God had them doing. And so let's just hold on in. And I just kind of relate to this. I just do. I've been a youth pastor, and I wasn't trained to be a youth pastor. I was a body shop guy, and I've been a youth pastor for 8 years. I've been actually on the staff of the church for not 8 years, probably 5. And I was talking to somebody the other night, and I was thinking, and I could count on one hand after 8 years of all the people that have graduated high school that are still serving God actively and in church. And I can count. It's 8 years. I've probably seen 200 kids come through, and graduated and gone. Probably one hand, and we was talking, and I'm thinking, man, what have I been doing? It's like, what are you doing, sitting on your hand? And just all kind of things go through your mind, and it's kind of depressing. And as a minister, we have this kind of stuff, but as Christians, people have them too. you go in your Christian life and you say, you know what, I'm just striving for joy, striving for victory. And what happens is we go to looking, and I'll be preaching about this in the next service, we go to looking for victory in places that don't offer victory, and we turn our back on the gospel for victory, and there you have it. And then once that happens, you start thinking, you know what, I done tried everything, so now I'm just going to turn inward. And they don't actually say this, but what happens is you turn inward, you say, you know what, I've done tried, and I ain't been successful, so the best I can do is just live for my own comfort. I'm just going to live to, and I ain't gave up on God. I'm still going to go to church, and I'm still going to do that stuff, but I'm going to put all my focus into my own, not bad stuff like drinking and partying and adultery, and just my own home, my own family, I'm just going to turn everything that way, and that's the focus, and I'm going to keep God and church and Jesus and everything in here too, and so that's kind of how it was. It was like, what's the point, what's the point? I want you to know today that God has a word for you. If you're that servant that is like, you know what, I'm doing the best I can, and I love you, and I'm going to keep doing the best I can, but I'm getting it on every side, and it's hard to see the value of what's going on. If that's you, God has a word for you. And here it is. He says, verse 4, this is the word Haggai said to them. He said, verse 4, yet now be strong, O Zerubbabel, saith the Lord, and be strong, O Joshua. Joshua was the first high priest back from exile, son of Josedek, the high priest. And be strong, all ye people of the land, saith the Lord. He was saying, be strong, Brother Eddie. Be strong, Jason. Be strong, Christ Church. Be strong, all the people that call themselves by my name. Be strong. Be strong. And he says, work. He says, you work. Why do you work? Because I am with you. That's what he said. You work because I'm with you. You be strong and you work. You may not understand all the time. You may not see the results that you want all the time. But if you're working according to my word, according to, God commanded them specifically, you do 1, 2, and 3, and they obeyed specifically. They did 1, 2, and 3. And as long as you are obeying, he says, you work. You be strong and you work because I'm with you. And he says, verse 5, it says, according to the word that I covenanted with you when you came out of Egypt, and my spirit remains among you. This covenant that he made, he promised them that he would be with them. He promised them that he would raise them up. He promised them that God's kingdom would not only survive, but would reign. He promised them. And I want you to know today that we're far removed from that in history, but we have a covenant with God too. Jesus said, this is the covenant that I make with you in my blood. And no matter what, one of my favorite passages in the New Testament is that Jesus tore down the principalities and powers, making an open show of them and nailing them to the cross. And we can hold on to that knowing that, things will happen. We as Christians, we as people with the Spirit, we as people of the church and people of God, servants of His kingdom, we have the very keys of the kingdom that He said. We have the keys. We have the gospel, which opens up the kingdom to people, and we have the gospel, which is also the judgment of God that closes the door of the kingdom to the people. I mean, we have the very kingdom of God, have been given it. And so God says to us as servants, even those times like these people here, I just so related to them when I read this. Even though you, youth pastor, you might be doubting the value of what you're doing. You might be doubting the successfulness of what you're doing. You might be doubting all kinds of things. You might do all these things, but you be strong and you obey the word of the Lord and you work because I'm with you. That's what he said. The second thing at the end of this verse 5, it says, fear ye not. Now I want you to know something. This is not, oh, sugar, don't be afraid. This is a command of God. He says, he's commanding, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. And you can see fear. I've always thought of fear as just scared or terror, fright, that. But fear can be all kinds of things. Doubt is fear. Depression is fear. Discouragement is fear. That's I'm not doing good. And it's all what I found was when I huddle up in the corner and say, God, I'm just not good. That's just pride masked as humility. It's just me saying, God, I don't want to fail. I can't do this. I don't trust you enough to go on ahead thinking that you're big enough to do it. I don't see the results that I want, therefore I'm just going to hunker down in this corner and huddle up. That's fear. It says, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Look at what it says. It says, verse 6, "For thus saith the Lord of hosts, yet once it is a little while, and I will shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and the dry land. And I will shake all nations, and the desire of all nations shall come, and I will fill this house with glory, said the Lord of hosts." We may not understand. We may not see God move the way we think He ought to be moving. May not do these things. We may not see the value of our service or our work or what we're doing. But all these things come by God's power. The success comes by God's power. The results, the value in what you're doing and what we're doing it's not about the result. It's about the obedience. Because it's God. If we could work us a plan up to do it, and suddenly we would see all the results, it would be really tempting for us to say, "Hey, we got it going on, don't we?" But if we could work us a plan up and spend all this effort on doing it, and it fail miserably, and then God come right behind us and do it by His power, then who gets the glory? Then who gets the praise? You see, He says, "I will fill this house." Do you know, I'm going to read a verse to you. The writer of Hebrews quotes this verse from Haggai. In Hebrews 12:26, he says, he's talking about God, he said, "Whose voice then shook the earth, but now He has promised," this is Hebrews 12, "that He has promised, yet once more I shall shake not only the earth, but also heaven." And then the writer of Hebrews explains what he's talking about here. He says, "And this word," what he said about shaking the earth and the heavens, he said, "This word, yet once more, signifies the removing of the things that are shaken and the things that are made, that those things cannot be shaken will remain. Wherefore," talking about us, "we, receiving a kingdom that can't be moved, let us have grace, whereby we may serve God acceptably with reverence and godly fear." It's saying that, for these people that were building this house of God here, and the wall, and the city, and all these things going on, what Haggai's trying to get through their mind is that God's kingdom is God's kingdom, and it will be successful. It will reign. It will be victorious, and indeed it is victorious right now. Even though we may not have the results that we want, even though we may doubt the value of our service and what we're doing and the ministry and all these things, it will be successful. Now, individual Christians, they may be persecuted and killed. They may have bad things happen to them. Individual churches, may have bad things happen to them, may come and go. But the church, the kingdom of God, the kingdom of His Son, the children of God, oh no, they reign, and they reign right now, and they'll reign in the future, and they'll reign forever. God so promised it. It's His kingdom that we strive for. He's in control. Verse 8, back to Haggai, says, it says, "The silver is mine." They were scared. It's not as good as Solomon's temple. Solomon had all this stuff, God says, "The silver's mine, and the gold is mine, says the Lord." He's in control. So these guys, it was kind of foolish, actually, if you think about it. They were worried about not having the silver and gold that Solomon had. They were worried about not having the splendor and the glory and all the majesty of Solomon's temple. And God's like, who do you think owns all that? Do you think, how are you going to get it without, if I decide to bring it, I'm going to bring it. If I decide to do it, I'm going to do it. Who do you think is in control of all that stuff? It was God that owned all the silver, all the gold. And it's not just about money. What He was saying is, look, this temple, I've commanded you to do something. I've commanded you to serve. I've commanded you to work. And I have not left you on your own strength and your own power to see it succeed or to see it fail. That would be dumb, because we don't have no strength and we don't have no power. He says, I control all this stuff. I'm sovereign over everything, all creation, and all the silver's mine, all the gold's mine. Everything that you are desiring to succeed, to see your service to me succeed, I own that. I own all that, and I will bring it. I'll bring it. He said, I'm in control. And it's easy for us. It's easy for us, no matter what kind of service you're doing, no matter what kind of things you're doing, it's easy for us to get discouraged especially when it seems like hell comes every other day, and there's a new obstacle every single day. And when something just presents itself, and you've got to overcome that, and you overcome, and you're like, man, now I need a break, and then here comes something else, and then you're like, I've overcome that, by the power of God's grace, and you're like, whew, man, I'm glad that's over. And then here comes something else. After a while, it's pretty exhausting. I mean, it's just exhausting. And it can be, you feel like, we're alone. And I'm talking about I'm not talking about pastors, and I'm talking about all Christians, you just life, it's just, and you just feel like, I just can't get this done. I just can't get this done. I'm not good enough. I'm not succeeding. It's just lonely. It's lonely and exhausting. And as soon as I get over one thing, here comes another thing. And look at verse 9. This is the last verse we'll look at. It says, the glory of this latter house. He was talking to them about their service, about what God had told them to do. He said, your service, your ministry, if you want to call it that, your whatever, says, the glory of this latter house shall be greater than that of the former. Talking about Solomon's temple, said the Lord of hosts. And this is the phrase really that stuck out to me. It says, in this place I will give peace. I'll give peace in this place. You see, it doesn't make any difference if you can't count but one person still living for God after being a youth pastor for 8 years. It don't make no difference, because God's kingdom will never be removed. That's one more that was included in the kingdom, if that's all. I'm not saying that's all. I'm just saying if that is. That's one more. And God's kingdom, you read Revelation, it numbers the sands of the seashore. He said, I saw a multitude that no man can number. And that's one more. That's one more right there. And just that striving. God has told us to just obey the Great Commission and just to do what we do, to live separate from the world, to proclaim the gospel of Christ, and just leave all the rest to Him. He proclaimed us to advance His kingdom. And His kingdom is those that live under the authority of Jesus Christ. So, kind of to sum everything up, the call, if you're that servant, if you're that servant of God, that you hadn't gone back on anything, you hadn't doubted God, nothing like that. It's not anywhere that serious. But it's like, man, I just get discouraged because I don't see the value of what I'm doing. I want to do for God. I don't want to do for my glory. I want to do for Him, and it just seems like I screw it up every time I touch it. And it just seems like I don't have the right plan. I don't have the right program to get this to work, the way I want. I just don't have the thing. His call, Haggai's call to you, his call to the servant is, you know what? Your job is just to serve the king. You're the servant. You serve the king. That's all you do. When He says move, you move. When He says go, you go. You serve the king, and you leave the kingdom for the king to run. You leave the kingdom for the king to grow. And when He says you do this, you do it. You obey. You obey the king. You love Him. You serve Him. You worship Him. You obey the king. When He says you go and preach, you go and preach. When He says you go and witness, you go and witness. When He says that you take the youth to play paintball, then you do that. That might be stretching a little bit, but you know what I mean. You just serve the king. That's what a servant does. He serves the king. That's all he does. He serves the king. So his word, Haggai's word to the servant today is to be strong, to work, do not fear, and then the promise, in this place, I will give peace. I will give peace. So that's our victory. So see, for the longest time, I'm a book guy. I read lots of books all the time, and I'm always searching for the next plan, the next program, the next whatever. And it took me a while to understand that, after about 40 of them failed with youth groups and all that, it was like, the plan is to serve the king. The plan is to serve Him, and you just let God do the results. You got to be obedient. Now, I'm not saying let's just not worry about nothing and just sit back and just let God do it. You obey the king. You serve the king, and you leave the results to Him. And He is in charge of growing the kingdom. He is in charge of running the kingdom, and we're His servants. But the peace, I will give peace in this place, that peace is for the servant. Okay? That peace is for the servant. That's not a peace that He gives to one who wants to be served. And I think that's where we also hit a lot of stuff. You see, what we do here is we call people to be a part of the kingdom. it's we say, I'm going to talk about this later, but we talk about being forgiven and being saved and born again, and those are all Bible words, and those are all, but what that means to be born again is that God saved me and given me a new heart. He's forgiven me of my sin, and He has brought me into a kingdom that will never be destroyed, that's victorious right now, and I am a child of the King, and I serve the King, and I worship the King, and it's a new life of those things. It's not just a call to pray a prayer, and I like what you said the other day when you said He is the prayer. I heard that He said it's not just about a prayer because He is the prayer, and that's exactly right. It's not just a call today for you. It's not just a call to invite Him. That's what most people think Christianity is God bless me, God serve me, and not serve me, but God forgive me, God give to me, God bless me, God teach me, God, all these things, and those things are part of it. But it's never about God, here I serve you. God, you are the king of the kingdom, and I'm the servant of the kingdom, and so I serve you. That's what separates these people in Haggai from the other folks, is that there were some that were servants of the kingdom, servants of the king, and others were just wanting to be served. So today, the call for you, if you're a servant of the kingdom, and you've ever felt like this, you may not even be feeling like this now, but maybe sometime you've doubted the value of what you're doing. You hadn't gave up on God. You hadn't renounced anything. You aren't even in the corner huddled up crying, wishing God, it's nothing like that. Nothing like that. But, I just want to be more. I want to do more. It just seems like what I'm doing is not working. The value is not there. I just don't know, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know. Be strong, work, serve God, and in this house He will give peace. In this place He will give peace. That's what He says. And we don't have to worry. We don't have to worry. We don't have to worry about that. The question before you guys now this morning is, am I a servant of the kingdom? That's the question. I mean, it's one thing to say, if you ask 100 people in America, are you saved? Every one of them say, yeah, just about. If you ask young people, 99% of them will say, yes, I'm a Christian. But can you point to my service to the kingdom? Not that services makes you a Christian, but am I a servant of the King? Because if you're not a servant of the King and not a servant of the kingdom, then nothing I've said today applies to you. Nothing applies to you whatsoever. You don't have any guarantee of peace. You don't have any guarantee of anything. God has called us to be a part of His kingdom. And the King runs the kingdom. And we serve the King in His kingdom. So today, Haggai's call to you, servant of God, is to be strong and work. And God will provide the increase. You water, do your thing, obey Him, and He will provide the increase. And everything else you just leave to the King, because the King is in control. And for you that are maybe not be part of the kingdom, the call to you is to submit yourselves to God. It's to repent of your own kingship of your life and to trust Him and to make Him your King. And that's His call to you, because that's what we do. You have a king, and that king is either Christ or He's yourself. And you can look deep down in your heart and say, you know what, I just feel that God, I love God and He knows my heart. Yes, He does. That's why He's begging you to repent of your sin and to trust Him. And then He'll change your life and you'll be able to see the outworking of the King in your life. Let's pray. Lord, we come to You today and we thank You for being our King. We thank You, God.